Usually we pick a topic and there might be a more of a presentation style. The Rev thinkers are sharing something that we've seen related to sales or finance or marketing, production issues, trends in the marketplace. Today is just a good day to talk about leadership. Um, there's leadership on all scales. But as I was saying before, we kind of started sharing is, there, a lot of it is expected from us as business owners, and we're not always perfectly equipped for those conversations, but we are sharing life with other people, ups and downs in their personal lives, in the businesses, and in the industry, in pop culture, whatever the stuff is. And today might be just a good moment, like we're all sharing something. That might be a good moment to process together and kind of think about leadership, what it means to be a leader, and then helping people cope. Some of you might have employees or people that are somewhat divided today. Some that are happy, glad something's happening, some that are mad about the process. I know the first conversation I had this morning, it was early, 7 a.m. And, you know, they had to wake up to news they didn't want to wake up to. And so it was already jumping right into the conversation. Um, but a lot going on. But I just want to check in, see how everyone's going, get a sense of what they're. Joe, Matt, Jason, you guys want to say hello and introduce any kind of thoughts of where you guys are in this starting today?
Yeah, it's good to see you all today. The way that I'm feeling, for better or worse, today is a little bit drained. Tim and I were talking about this before you all hopped on. Um, whatever sort of side of an aisle you are on, odds are you invested energy, emotionally and intellectually, into the thing that happened. And
Yeah,
the
well,
thing
I think
happened.
the issue is that it's just
I'm
more
feeling
When
a little
somebody's
tired as a result.
like
Mm.
and then
And hi, I know I'm not even an American, so I felt, like maybe I shouldn't say anything. But I just want to let you know that there are a lot of people feeling the feels in Australia. Like there were a lot of people nervously watching the television to see which way it would go. And I had to watch a lot of Adventure Time last night to kind of get it out of my head.
Whatever
But
you got to do.
then started listening to a lot of Public Enemy this morning to get me out of bed.
right. But you had I think you woke up to it, right? Because you're a day and a half ahead.
No, it was all coming to the pointy end right about the time of making dinner. I think as a political satire post here said, the election will be announced when it's bedtime and you're scrubbing your teeth. So it was kind of like, yeah, 9:30ish when it was pretty clear which way I was going to go.
Yeah, right. I'm just curious for kids from the outside. You want some thoughts? Just like start off. How did you guys start off the day? Um, any overall burdens that you're feeling just for yourself or your team when you kick off a day like today?
I think one of the things that I'd say is like, like kind of like what Joe said, regardless of what side or whatever you were thinking or thought or whatever, like we all invested something in this, and to a certain extent, and we kind of started our day going, well, how does this result impact us moving forward? Because I think we felt like just from an American election perspective, you can harken back to, and one of the clients that Tim and I were talking to earlier, who's based in New York, and just relating how 2016 was a very different day for everybody, and then 2020 was a weird day because of pandemic, and then here we are having another weird day, and it's like, true, okay, great. Now that we've all gotten out of bed and made our bed and brushed our teeth, what do we do with our lives? Because the reality is like we've got to we got to keep moving forward regardless of what the result was, whether we appreciated it or don't.
Yeah. I'm curious if anyone would be honest and say that um, today wasn't that impactful. Who has a perspective that says like, well, I kind of expected this. Yeah, Nico, that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, I had a sense way early on. I think I was telling Katu and some people in our team here in New York, it's like, I think this was like weeks ago. I was like, because when we were talking about, we're hoping blah blah wins or whatever. I go, well, I told them right now, I'm just figuring out. Let's just figure out, regardless who wins. I think we need to figure out how to move forward depending who wins, whoever wins. Just figure out how to move forward on that. And and they're like, no, no, no. It's really interesting. So for me, it's just like, yeah, I kind of knew it. there's little things that I saw. I was like, I wasn't feeling, the Democratic side. I was feeling a lot of the Republican side. So it was hard for me to see how that was going to happen. And I think people were holding on too much of the hope, where the hope, it seemed kind of just a word. No one acted upon the hope.
Mm.
So it's like they were hoping that someone else was going to do the work for the hope versus themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think I think one of the things I told Katu today was like, well, you know what? And again, she's the one who's feeling the burden of it, because of many things. I can share that later on. But I was telling her, well, this is what democracy is,
Mm.
right? We keep
Yeah,
talking about that we want democracy, and this is an example of that.
yeah.
So that's kind of, and
Almost
I don't
all
know.
human things have an ugly factor to them, or to say a human factor to them, right? It doesn't it's not pristine in all the ways that you want to. So uh, there's a reality check there. Anyone else kind of want to share where they are?
Yeah, I got something. So I think I underestimated the possible effect of this on my team. And I think part of that is that, like, I don't know, I've been reading a lot of books and all kinds of things, just sort of grounding myself and trying to keep perspective on stuff. I don't think what's going on right now politically is worth everybody absolutely losing their minds over. Um, and and so I think I came into today, sort of with that mindset, which, if you're leading a bunch of people, that could be a helpful mindset. But I got in today, we're just kind of getting into work, and um uh one of my animators had posted in Slack, it's one of those things where he's kind of joking, but he's not joking. He's like, this seems like a good day for all of us to just take a mental health day. And then just like looking at the emoji responses, all like there was some crying blood and there were some middle fingers, and there was like, okay, so there's some feelings happening here, right? And I'm like, okay, well, that's to be expected. So I just like kept going about my day. And then, I noticed like one of our meetings got moved, and I started, and I kind of pressed on it. I was like, no, we need to keep that meeting. And it's like, well, really it can be until next week. And basically the headline for me was, people are feeling this. They don't want to work, or they want to just complain, or they want to curl up in a ball or something. I don't know. And I need to at least address it and say, like, look, if you need mental health time, that's why we have mental health hours to allocate. That's why we have PTO. Take that time. But
Yeah,
I'd rather that than, just kind of like pretending to work or not doing it. And so I ended up recording this video and sending it out to the team around noon today. And basically just said, look, I know that this is a day where there's going to be some big feelings, there's emotions. Like, we've had, really, for the last couple of years, we've had the entire world sort of like wringing their hands about, what's going to happen with this election, or certainly for the past few months. And so there, emotions going to be expected. And I was just reminding everybody that the things that bring us together, the things that make Secret Power special, got nothing to do with politics. It's about the things that we make together. It's about how we support one another. It's about how we are for one another. And that's our biggest chance to make an impact within, the little circle that we're in. And so let's be proud of that. I certainly am.
yeah,
But all of that said, if you need time to process, please take that time. And a couple people took me up on that. And some people said, thank you for saying that. Really appreciate it. And just kept going with about their day.
yeah. That's great. Go ahead, Jordan.
Hey, I took a personal day yesterday. Did I miss something?
Whatever. Even the comedian to come in that timing.
No, but we're pretty somber around here. Although I was in Missouri twice, Arkansas a month ago, Missouri like in September, October, Austin and Dallas in the last month, and did not feel the democratic love and hoopla that I felt here in Los Angeles. So I think, like Nico was saying, I was not blindsided by this at all. I was very hopeful, and
artists, creative people tend to galvanize and rise up when the thumb is pushed down on us. So I think this is our time. And we saw it when Trump first took office with like the Women's March. Now, look, major setbacks, but I can see that that's like in our family and in my tribe of people, we're gonna, I think, get louder now.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I like the call to action, right? I mean,
Mhm.
something we should probably just realize is that we're a culture of cultures. Creative is what one thing that we share in common, but it doesn't necessarily we share all things in common. And I keep finding myself in subcultures of all types. Just where I live in the U.S. and have different places that I get to visit. It's so interesting all the people I love and how different the conversations are about politics or religion or whatever those things are. You're not supposed to money. There are things you're not supposed to talk about, right? Um, but the reality of like it doesn't slow down how I want to serve or want to lead. It makes me almost pick up or build up more of an understanding and compassion for something that I don't always understand. And it drives me to learn something differently. So I kind of feel like the creative mind, like you're saying, Jordan, often gets triggered to say like, okay, well, this is what I've been given. I'm not now. It's the time to use my superpower to kind of work it out, right? And see what's possible. Yeah.
And I
Well,
think there's
good, Joe.
I think there's something to be said for sort of creative folks and anyone really feeling the call to galvanize, but also giving people a little bit of space to gather themselves. I think there are physiological effects of whether you're celebrating or grieving, and again, we can sort of talk about that. Um, but an impulse to reach for something you can control is often an unproductive sort of like stress response when we think about leadership and we think about sort of like the way we direct our teams. But I actually wonder in this time if reaching for the things we can control personally and professionally isn't a healthy way to reground ourselves in what we think, what we feel, and what needs to be done. It also allows us to take a step forward that is not scary and horrifying and burning down a building if that's what you're so inclined to do. Right? I spent a lot of time today building spreadsheets. Tim, you and the rest of the RevThink team know that that's not my forte. You can, yeah, my capacity for spreadsheet building is quite limited relative to my other abilities, but it was actually kind of quite comforting. And I was able to make a little progress and have a little bit of free headspace. And so when I'm talking to my clients and we think about sort of like talking to teams, I wonder if pulling back and asking ourselves like, hey, can we focus on a handful of things we can control for the minute, for the week, for sort of as long as a human being might need, if that isn't a way to be forward thinking and also a little empathetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me just play the opposite of that, just to have a question about leadership or just our own health, right? That sometimes I feel like there might be a sense of grief. Again, like I would even have to understand that people that invested in a campaign that won came to a finish line. So something that they've been doing, even on the victory side, it's the day after Super Bowl. It's the day after, the shotgun wedding. Like all of a sudden, you're like, wait, what did I really do? What's going on? How's this really working? So you have to kind of get back to work and do something different. So even that transition, because you can be wrapped up in something for a couple of years, is something people are coping with no matter what. But it makes me wonder, like, if we dive in and we just say, well, business as usual and skip over that emotional moment, are we actually being healthy? Or is this, as the leadership gives us the opportunity, a moment to connect, understand, go deeper, not to drag it out of people if they don't want to talk about it, but also maybe not to skip over it. Um, and I think that's like, we've inherited this leadership based off of what we're trying to do in our own career, and we have to lean into it sometimes and motivate people to get beyond the issues, the tired, the technology problems, whatever. But I almost wonder, like, when life shows up, maybe we have to understand a different mode than just like, well, we got to deliver and almost skip the day or whatever. I think we might be a little bit like Rip Van Winkle, like trying to skip all the bad days and never really capturing all of life that way, Go ahead, Nico.
Well, I don't know if this put anything in perspective. So, so today is a very interesting day. Of course, a lot of different emotions. Brought the kid to school. We actually had, we had a meeting with some reps today, but at the same time, after that, we had to go to the doctor and check out because Katu has the BRCA genes for breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So we went to the doctor, today and had a whole consultation about all that stuff. And just to kind of maybe put some things in perspective, like I think, for her, the issue for her is really, it's existential because right now it's the issue of like, what if is an if moment of like our insurance gets revoked because of like new administration in terms of all this. That becomes more of a reality because she's in a position where she would have to do, take breast tissue out, do the surgery just to make sure that, just to get it all out because she's at 80% possibility. So, and all those kind of covered in our insurance. And of course, we also have some of the Obamacare stuff happening. So that's also the concern as we're doing this the whole day, plus other emotions, trying to talk to people and then sitting there and having a serious discussion with the doctor and then talking to reps saying, it's the first time we're meeting each other. How are you doing? And then it's like, for her, it was totally roller coaster up and down, and,
yeah.
And I had to like, also kind of be like, okay, let's figure this out together, So it was an interesting day, I must say.
Yeah. You have hit a lot of life moments all in one day.
All in one day.
Yeah. You need someone to talk
that's even beyond the team,
my cell
right?
phone, Nico. You just call my cell phone if you need something to process with. And sometimes you just need to phone a friend or whatever. Is anyone finding it challenging to have like respectful conversation about this? I'll say like, maybe you agree with your team and you want to send out the emoji cons with vomiting or blood tears and middle fingers or whatever you want to go along with it. Anyone finding it a moment where like, wait a second, I probably should hold myself back, check it or lean into it? What are your thoughts there? Like, is it better to be fully human and show like, yeah, I want to process this differently? Or does anyone deal with people are storing in someone else's face, like someone's happy and someone's sad, and you just be the mediator?
This is kind of what I've been struggling with a little bit today is like, okay, as a leader, should you be like, so like my wife and I've been watching like all of the seasons of The Crown lately. And so you learn about like the job of the sovereign is to be completely neutral and you don't get involved, but you are there for strength and you're there for support and you're there for empathy. And so like, am I the queen in this scenario? Is that the role? Or is it like, yeah, man, this sucks. Like, that's what I chose the queen route today, but I'm just wondering like how everyone sort of handles this as a leader.
Yeah. How about you, Jen?
I will say it's been interesting to hear this conversation. I mean, to answer your specific question, and I'll be quite blunt. Everyone in my shop is very liberal. So I've insulated myself from having to have those conversations. The challenge, the challenge maybe particularly for women is the fact that so half the country's good with a convicted felon and perpetrator of sexual assault as our leader in chief. So that is a different emotion than we lost, right? So we've got two things going on for half the population, give or take. We are sad because of what happened yesterday. We are shocked, surprised, whatever. But then we're also incredibly fearful for the future. I have staff who are worried that their marriages won't hold up in specific states. There are states where they couldn't go if they were pregnant because they wouldn't have access to an abortion. He has said he will get rid of this kind of medical blah, blah, blah. So will my thing be covered? So we're having those kinds of conversations. So there's both the processing of it and the mental, like, oh, what will my healthcare cover for my employees if this kind of policy change happens 2 years from now? So you're in this weird space as the business owner where you're having feelings, but then you're also helping people process. So I found today being a lot of sponge of hearing other people's concerns, but a lot of those are really valid for me to think through, because I do have employees who are afraid that certain healthcare won't be covered anymore, or that, there are states where I could not send an employee safely to work if I needed to have them go visit a client. And the reality is that it's that way now, and what's it going to look like in 2 years? So there's a lot of that going on. And I'll tell you, Jay, I wasn't nearly as civil. I had one employee who's like, I don't think I can work today. And I was like, you know what? The cows still have to be milked. All the kids went to school, and we have a client who's having a conference today, and they're all working. And so will we. We might not be productive, but you're not going to sit at home and doom scroll. So get to the office,
Nice.
which was probably not very friendly.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. So I don't know that
that's
answers
the
honestly,
challenge, is
that
like
was
how
my
much empathy.
mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my mindset starting the day. It was like, we just need to keep moving. And then when I saw some people just weren't, I was like, okay, well, then you're going to have to actually log PTO hours to say that you're not working today. That's fine, but that's the trade-off. I mean, I didn't say it that way,
Yeah.
but
No.
it's like, that's why we have that.
Yeah.
I told him no.
Yeah. I think that there's often, sometimes I try to reconcile where, we take our immediate situation and we project it out as if this is what it's always going to be like. And sometimes shock or disdain or whatever has this like negative thing of like, it will always be bad, it'll never get there, this is the worst thing ever. We use expressions like that. And then we play it out for real, and it turns out like just a bunch of hot air, never really happened. Other protocols are in place to stop it. I know, Jen. But like there's opportunity in all of that for us to be involved as well as come alongside, and not let it kind of dive in. But I think that's this weird burden we are as leaders. Like, we're also experiencing this. We don't get to not experience it and just be this outsider. We understand where it feels like we're coming across cold, but as Jenny, you pointed out, like, the cows need to be milked. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You're gonna have to. There's a maturity element we're asking you to kind of step into in doing this job and part of this industry as well. Anybody have go ahead, Jordan.
Well, we're just saying we milk the cows all day. I'm prepping a gig for next week that we purposefully did not want to start today, or would it be yesterday? We pushed a week because either way, on a rank and file film crew, you have long-term Trump fan Republicans, and you have, liberal lefty Marxists like myself.
Yeah.
And so all the phone calls today and the texts and the emails have been, I mean, there's been slight acknowledgments, but it's putting the head down, being the queen, Jay, just moving forward. But I think the biggest thing, to your point, Jen, is it's hard to stomach that people tolerated him. I mean, I have 3 daughters now, 1 granddaughter. My son and his wife were talking about moving to North Carolina. And that now I look at that through an entirely different lens, even though they have a Democratic governor. Business wise, I think compartmentalizing emotions from what needs to get done is good. Like, and even as far as like my Facebook post versus LinkedIn was very apolitical, just acknowledging, what happened. Whereas Facebook is decidedly personal. And I think it's with my clients, they've run the gamut for 25 years.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
so I rambled, but
no.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that America has stomached such a pig.
Twice.
It's just, yeah, twice. Well, Jordan, I just want to say it's interesting because Katu and I were discussing it, and also to Jen's point, on one women's perspective, it's like we were saying, America is just not ready for like having a female president, and after watching Martha Stewart's documentary, after doing MTS like Megan Thee Stallion's documentary, it's like if you can put a female billionaire in jail, it's like it's like once you get to a certain point, they just want to take you down. So we just find that interesting because even Megan Thee Stallion had the same story where she's on top of the game. She's like really famous rapper, but still no one believed her.
Mhm.
It was just so we're just finding these patterns. Just find that interesting happening, and as you know, moving forward, like how to even move forward as a leader if you want to bring someone up into that space, if the world or like say the country isn't even ready or even want it, it's heartbreaking.
And I think there's a line to be walked between sort of maintaining diplomacy as a status quo and my impulse to apologize for every single person who looks like me. It's it's going to be a tough line to walk.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of I have 5 boys. And so they are all tall, capable, good-looking white men, and they're not bad guys. So I almost feel like there's got to be some of like there is reality to integrity and strength and opportunity and care and concern that a man can actually do and not always be the target of it. So there's some sort of backlash. Sometimes I feel like it can go very extreme, and I often like to think of the opportunity to just be to think critically about what the situation is. I ask myself a question: is there something I don't understand? I mean, I didn't go to any rallies. Matter of fact, like where I register to vote, it truly doesn't matter if my ballot goes in at all. It's predetermined because of gerrymandering. So like there are things set up that we are restricted from, regardless of what our personal thoughts are, because of situations that were created way before this moment here, right? So it makes me just kind of think of like what is really happening and how can I help people? Like what is the real issue? And there is some almost like disgust for the people that keep being presented and chosen in these positions. And then what does real leadership look like? So if our presidents aren't going to be our leaders, maybe I have to do something even more and step into that role more. I don't know. This gets me thinking. I guess my company's called RevThink, so I'm gonna think more than anything. But there's some just reality of like I don't know everything. I keep watching these documentaries, Nico, and I keep learning things about people and thinking, dang, I had that one wrong too. Like that's what really happened. Like, dang, someone should have told us and not just like spun it in the news when it was going on or whatever.
There's a budding thought in my head, and this really isn't formed, so it could be junk. But I think Nico, you said it. Like America clearly isn't ready for a strong woman to lead. I also think there's a good number of Americans who hold resentment against people who are really put together and articulate and educated and strong. And I do believe that potentially those who voted for Trump like the baseness and the sloppiness because it feels human or familiar. And because of the kinds of clients we serve, I'm like, I have to look into if that's true. Because if we're to reach some people and ask them to make any form of change, maybe our tactics have to be different to have them hear what we have to say. And by we, I mean like the agency doing the work that we do, trying to get people to, push a button, right? Like is so much of America either put off by polished logic or attracted to sloppy audacity? Is that big enough that it should even change how we make our messages? I don't know. Weird thought. And then just the other thing I wanted to add, and then I'll shut up, is one of you said it, is the only way I got through today, and the only way I think we'll get through the next period of time is what change can I affect and where can I affect change, and ignore as much as possible the things that you just have no control over, and focusing in on the things we can do right now or today. Which I think helps with our staff leadership wise, reminding people that they can focus. And maybe just with our communities as a whole.
I was thinking that too, Jordan, the serenity prayer, right? Yeah, man, it's humble pie when you have to put yourself in that situation. Jen, thanks for sharing that. I think that's um probably a lot of what we're all thinking, to be honest, what you just shared. And to recognize, maybe the role that we have is, goes beyond responsibility, um, into care. Um, Sometimes what we have to kind of deal with as leaders is be the role model in that situation, and so we have to be the first one to learn it and the first one to kind of step up to it. I find that a privilege, but I also find it a burden, so it's really kind of stinks when that stuff happens. um I kind of want to like ask maybe one last question, or a second last question, is something along the lines of like, has anyone learned anything along the way? Is there any question that you didn't understand, or situation um that even if it's just like what you learned was humans make bad decisions? I don't know. It can be simple, but I feel like we've been handed something that requires us to now be a critical thinker and acknowledge different viewpoints. Something that if we stay curious, we can grow from it, mature from it, understand something more, serve better. Um, but hope maybe in the long run, just learn, where where your edge is and what your strengths are. But just curious if anyone's specifically learned anything through the last few months, or through this specifically, or and they,
So
Joe.
someone said something to me over the course of the last week as we're discussing the kind of run up to the election, and folks who disagree with my views. He said, you can't reach people who don't want to be reached. But what I'm maybe learning, and Jen, apropos of your perspective, is, well, I can't reach anyone who doesn't want to be reached by me. But part of that is an inward look at the way I present myself, the way I talk about my views and values, and the way I open doors for conversation and open doors for change. Um, there may be a categorical resentment for somebody who looks and talks and thinks like me. That might be standing in the way of, I don't know, growth or empathy or an open conversation about values. And so I think what I learned, so I think there's something to be taken away from, if they don't want to be reached by me, it's not because they are bad and I am good. It's because there's something that needs solved, and I can take a little bit of accountability for that.
Yeah, that's great. Even if you don't have your camera on, you can still turn your microphone if you want to share too. Anybody else learn something?
I think similar to kind of what Joe, what you're saying. I think for me, the last couple of months, what I'm realizing, one is that definitely I told there's certain things that kind of happened internally with some of our staff, and it's like, it's one of those things where if they're not willing to hear it, they're not going to hear it. They just won't. And I think I also learned that with our 3-year-old kid, right? They're not if they don't want to hear it, they're not going to hear it. So I think that's helped me understand that. And there's some degree where we we're taking what we're learning from just taking care of our kid, and how do we apply that with the team, because you tend to have to kind of put yourself back for a second and really listen and hear. And I think that's one of the key things that we got, is like we need to really listen and hear what they're trying to say. Maybe they can't articulate, emotions are coming in, so what they're saying and maybe not what they mean necessarily, and they don't know how to articulate. and and I think the past couple of weeks, it's really learning to navigate this conversation and kind of slowly probing more. And like Joe, like you mentioned, I think for us sometimes, if it's not me, maybe they'll open up with someone else having that conversation with. So that's another thing we realize. it's not necessarily they don't want to hear it. Maybe it's the person they're talking to. So it's an interesting dynamic trying to understand that whole conversation and understanding, what's stopping them from hearing or
Yeah.
listening. So
Yeah, or how to break through, how to get a word in. Yeah. That's a good thought. Let's gain anything from this. What
gone
would
through it
Mr.
one
Rogers?
time. We should find. I think we're resilient, right?
Yeah.
So we need to find a way to push forward.
Like, what would Mr. Rogers teach us right now? Right.
Well, I think Mr. Rogers would teach us to be curious and to seek to understand and to not just, make our minds up about, a person or a group of people. And, it's, I don't know, I feel like in terms of what I've learned, I mean, really since 2016, it's required a lot of reading and searching and seeking and just trying to make sense of like the position that we find ourselves in now. It's like it doesn't really add up to me. I'm pretty moderate politically, and I think that's because I spend my time somewhere like regularly talking to the most conservative people you will ever meet and the most liberal people that you will ever meet. And I have to reconcile that. And one of the things that it's sort of forced me to do, I don't even know it's forced me to do it. It's like, it's a good thing. It's a blessing, is to like just talk about stuff person to person and understand. For example, like I have a lot of my wife's family is from rural Oklahoma. We go to family reunions every year, and we're around the campfire and we're just like talking and stuff like that. And so, like I have pretty regular conversations with people who have a completely different life experience from me, and I'm like, and it's like, and I love this guy, like I spend time with him, I love him. I'm gonna take the time to understand where he's coming from, and like, for me, like, how does Trump make sense to you? Like, really break it down for me. How does it make sense? And he explained it to me and I understood. I was like, okay, like that makes sense to me. And, you know, um, I don't know. I think the other thing is realizing that in the same way that, we talk a lot about right sizing your business, right? The type of structure that works for a 4-person company doesn't work for a 12-person company. And what works at 500K doesn't work at 4 million, right? We talk about this stuff all the time. And, one thing, I posted a link to this book that's been so instructive for me, but is just kind of realizing part of what we're seeing is that we have a system that's no longer right sized for the country and system, like institutionally and socioeconomically, it doesn't fit anymore. So we're feeling that squeeze and we're frustrated. Everyone is super frustrated. And do frustrated people make great rational logical decisions? No, they do not. But what they do is they do listen to the very loudest voice in the room. And if you're speaking with confidence, like, sounds like they know the answers. That sounds good to me. Let's just do it. Whatever. I want it fixed.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like we're sitting in right now. And it is going to suck for a lot of people, for sure. Like, this is going to directly affect a lot of people, but it was going to directly affect a lot of people the other way too.
That's good insights. I think the thing I learned, and I don't know if I learned it, but I heard it. I came across it a lot in the last, we call it 18 months or so. The situation I find myself in is I work in Hollywood, but I go to church. I homeschooled my kids. I only have boys, so I don't think people really even know where I fall or what I believe. But almost every person I'm in front of thinks I believe what they believe. They never ask me, they never get there, and they just want me to go along with it. So for me, I thought there was a moment that was very obvious, that when Kamala was running for president, nobody chose her. Like, she actually campaigned and nobody chose her. It was called a primary. It was a few years ago. That's why she became the vice president, because she wasn't elected. And then when the time came for the Democrats to choose a candidate, they just chose her because she was in a certain position, and they forgot to ask the question, does anyone really want her? But if I found myself in the wrong party or a wrong situation, people were hearing something very different than what I meant, because if I spoke out against her, all of a sudden I was against women or whatever. Until last night at 10:30, when the pundits started talking about that thing, and now all of a sudden now I'm trendy, even though I was thinking like, you're thinking like, what? We're so manipulated. That's what I learned. Like, the critical thinking was available then. It's only after she loses, but we have this fear factor that the dialogue beforehand is what's scary. Hey, do I have to give in to you? Do I have to believe you? Do I have to give up all my stuff to think critically about something? And just ask the question, is this really the right decision? But no, Oprah said it, I better believe it, or Beyonce is going to come after me with with something. Like, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I feel so manipulated sometimes by the big body that if I don't go along with it, I'm in trouble. And if you know anything about me, I often don't go along with the big group. It's actually one of my secret powers, is that I can always get to the front of the line because I look at something very, very different, and I can get to the front because I'm not following the crowd. So I don't know. It's very interesting to me, like how I actually want to be a mature adult talking about things, and how often I'm not allowed to process that in certain circles.
If I had to say two things, I'd say like one thing about less, like in a way, like the Matrix is kind of real. Like it's kind of programming us, and we're kind of stuck. Like, and I'm like, as much as I want to see the ones and zeros and be able to translate the code, like I still find myself feeling and emoting different ways based on like the screens that tell me how to feel. And it just is. I like, as I had that thought, I was like, maybe that's a little too radical to share, but it's like, no, the Matrix is kind of real. And then the other part is like, to put it all back into perspective. And Tim, the Mr. Roger reference, while you're wearing that cardigan sweater, really puts a point on it. But like,
I gotta change my shoes.
But we all, I mean, what is this? 10 of us right now? Like, we all live next door to somebody who is our neighbor. Like, so put on the freaking cardigan and go be their neighbor. Go, because that's really what it's all about, regardless of how they felt this way, or who won that way, or whatever, or even, whether they want to be plugged into the Matrix or they want to disconnect. They're still our neighbor, and we have an opportunity to go be a neighbor to them. And it's it's so interesting how we lose sight of all of that so quickly.
And Jason's neighbors wear a lot of camouflage, if you know what I mean. Like, those are hard conversations to have.
It's hard to fit in with my neighbors.
Wearing camouflage today.
I'll just say that it's hard to fit in with my neighbors.
It is a little hard to fit with your neighbors, for sure.
That's okay.
It's funny that Mr. Rogers showed up in my Instagram feed this morning. A clip from after 9/11 when he called on everyone for Tikkun Olam, which is, I had to Google it, even being Jewish. It means the concept of mending the world. And, what, Joe, you said about taking pause and not being impulsive or burning down the building. I think after that, and I was talking to my lovely wife about this, is like, maybe we need to pick the one thing that we can really focus on as creative people, as vocal people, that affects us personally, and see if we can educate people in a way that's not polarizing or just going out in the streets with pitchforks and knives, but actually get people, because I do believe you can change people's minds.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Or at least help them see, right? I often think that's what our job is. I'm a very much, if you seek, you will find it kind of a person. So how do I make you curious that you're looking for something? Revelation will find its way. I can't force revelation, but if you're looking, you'll find revelation. So
we are
it's a
in an
good
industry
calling.
that persuades, right?
Yeah. that's why Jordan likes to get behind the camera. He likes to show people how to see things differently, right? That's kind of the fun part about
Why
being a
not?
director. Yeah. Yeah.
And I made a decision a few years back that some people are going to get pissed off, and that's okay to not have their business. But I certainly don't go out of my way. I think you said it earlier, Tim, like just politics, money, certain things we don't talk about with our clients, especially politics, because they do run the gamut. But there are some times, I think, especially now moving forward, that we'll just draw the line. We're not a good fit. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
It's okay too. Yeah.
The interesting thing this morning, I was texting with both of my grown sons, and they both said, we've lived it before, and the country's lived through bad presidents before in bad times. And I said, yeah, but we're of privilege. Like we're white men. Think about your sisters. Think about your daughter who's, going to grow up under this. It's oppressive, but it's also dismissive.
Yeah.
That might be the topic, that and immigration, pretty personal to us.
I like that word, dismissive. That's exactly how it feels. Yeah. Yeah. It's not considerate of what anybody else cares or wants to think about it. It's self-fulfilling. It feels very much. Yeah. Narcissistic, as we would all say. Well, I got to tell you all, in case you don't know this, I love you all very much. This is really great to have this conversation with you. There's so many great things that we could do together in community, and leadership is not easy. So just for you all to participate, be part of this conversation, and have some thoughts for yourself and thoughts for your team, and care for them, and tell them to get back to milking the cows and giving them PTO and that kind of stuff that we do, so that we can be good servants to the people that we care for. It's really awesome. So I appreciate you all for doing what you do. I know it's not easy. Yeah,
Thank you, Tim.
of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, applause to you all. All right, we'll see you next week. We'll do a normal conversation. We'll just talk about sales or something like that.
Sales or cash flow. Come on, some really good, juicy
Yeah, we'll get
topics.
good cash flow conversation next week. We'll make Joe do the spreadsheet next week. That's what we're gonna do.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly what I need.
Cash flow is great to talk about when you have cash.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're gonna talk about cash.
True. Yeah.
All right, love you all. We'll see you
All
next
right.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you guys.